All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to thank you for coming after we had our little ice storm last week, so we were unable to run this webinar. So thank you for coming out again. Unfortunately, Debbie, who runs our demos, actually couldn't be with us today, but luckily for us, she recorded a demo beforehand, and so what I'm going to do is actually play this demo for you today. It'll be Debbie taking you through the steps that she normally runs when she talks to people about demos of the app. And then after that, I'll sort of take you through a bit more about BigRoad, and we'll go from there. So without further ado, I'll put Debbie on.
All right, so I'm just going to show you guys how to get set up with BigRoad. Now that you've downloaded the app, you're going to now sign in with your account. You should either have an email already created for you by your administrator, or you can get an email account set up for you on your own, or just give us a call as well and we can help walk you through that. So once BigRoad is downloaded, you will want to make sure you select sign in. Don't select the try it for free option unless you want to use that option to practice your logs. It is essentially an anonymous account, so your logs don't really get saved in this option. So once you're signed in, you would type in your email. If you've already signed in before, your email address gets saved. Put in your password. Make sure you select the correct fleet. And then it's going to ask you to select your truck. If you are adding your truck in for the first time, you're going to type in your truck number, and then you're going to select add, and it's going to ask you to put in the license plate and make sure you select the correct units, and then add truck. If you're in a company that already has truck numbers already entered, you would just type in to search, or type in the truck number or name to search for it. Or your last used truck will be at the top. Again, this is if the last truck would be only if you've already signed in before. So I'm just going to go ahead with my last truck. Now that I'm signed in, you're going to see here at the top, you'll verify that your name is at the top, the correct truck number, and the company or carrier name is also listed here. Then you're going to see the round dial here. This will allow you to change your duty status from off-duty, on-duty, driving, sleeper, and then other additional options would show up here if they're turned on by the account online. I'll then go through a little bit of daily logs, your messages, how that works, some options in the settings, and the odometer. I'll first explain here just this option. This option that you see here is apps within apps that are available only on Android devices. So if you do have an iPhone, you will not see this option here because Apple does not support apps within apps. And then of course below you're going to have the map that is provided by Google. So Google Map here. It's not showing my exact location because I don't have it set up with GPS. But of course on your device, as long as you are connected to GPS, you will be able to see your actual location. So first things first, let's go to the settings, and we are going to go to your profile. And you're going to basically verify that you have your name in correctly, your email address, your phone number if you want. You're going to verify that you have the correct cycle selected and your time zone. Your time zone should always be set to match basically where your home terminal is, and you would never have to change it. So if your home terminal is in the Eastern time zone, if you do go into a different time zone, you're not changing that. Always leave the time zone as is. And then also you will be adding your signature. So my signature is already in here, but basically it's going to have the option to select add instead of change signature. And you're just going to write it with your finger. Once you select save, your signature is saved here. And then you're done. One other thing you'll notice is that automatic duty status is also here, and this is checked off. So if you are using just the app on its own, the app will switch you between on duty and driving if it senses movement or the lack of movement within approximately 3 minutes. So yeah, if you wanted to do that, you should have that. It's going to be checked off automatically, but if you want to continue using that, you keep it checked. And to verify what version of BigRoad you're also using, go to About BigRoad. this here will tell you what version you're currently running. So right now, the most recent version of BigRoad is 7.0.3. So if you are not running 7.0.3, you'll want to go to the Google Play Store and update the app. Now, I'm back at the main screen here. I am going to basically put myself on duty. And as a driver, you'd essentially do a pre-trip. So we're going to do edit logs. And a pre-trip doesn't actually have to be entered in unless you find a defect. But I'm going to just fill one in anyways. And also for the locations, don't mind that there is going to be a violation here because the location is not going to actually be entered in. But with your device, as long as GPS is on, the location would automatically be entered in for you. So for my pre-trip, you're going to go to the vehicle inspection report, new inspection. You're going to select the truck or trailer that you are going to be inspecting. You put in the odometer mileage based on what you see on the truck. The location, again, would be entered in for you. So I'm just going to put that in for myself. And whether or not you found a defect. So I'm going to say I did find a defect and then I have a flat tire. I'm going to save that. And then, of course, you'd fix that before driving. So once that's done, you can go back to the main screen. And then you would essentially start driving. As soon as you start driving, this would change you to drive. And you would start recording your drive time. And when you stop, again, within about 3 minutes, it would put you back to on duty. It's not going to put you to off duty or sleeper. You do have to manually change your status when you're on duty or driving to off duty or sleeper if you're using the app on its own. If you're using DashLink, that's a whole other scenario. DashLink will automatically record your drive time for you. Now, if you are looking at this screen and you see this triangle warning sign, or basically on almost any screen, that basically means you have some violations. And if you scroll to the bottom here, it will say that there are 4 days with validation warnings. If you click on that there, it's going to tell you what kind of violations I have. So I have and what date this is. So this is for Tuesday. It shows that I have missing locations and then I went over my drive time. You have 14 days to fix violations, so it's really important that you fix those violations as soon as possible because I get a lot of drivers call in and talk about a violation that was maybe a month ago that they want to fix, and it's at that point it's too late to fix it manually through the app. The best thing to do would be to print the log and then manually fix it on paper. But basically, I just need to fix these kind of violations. I'm not going to fix them up right now because it can take a bit of time, but essentially once you fix these violations, then you go back here, we'll say that there are 3 days with validation warnings. And as you click on it again, it will take you to the next day where there's a warning. So the next day for me goes into the 23rd. So basically it's going to go through each day for you and let you know where your violations are, and it will walk you through what needs to get fixed until you no longer see this symbol here for you. I'm going to just explain also this screen. So this screen, some drivers actually prefer looking at their logs from the screen instead of going to this screen because you do get a lot of information. And if you have your recap on, you'll be able to see your availability, you'll see your cycle rules, your status, your shift and cycle resets, how much time you have until a break. And also below, you'll see if you've done an inspection, and of course your log graph here. This is also the screen where you would present your logs to an officer if you were stopped. So if an officer asks for if you're at an inspection and the officer asks to take a look at your log, you would then go here to inspect logs. You would select 7 days plus today if you're in the US, or 14 days plus today if you're in Canada. Then you have 4 options. You have view on screen, send to email, print to a printer, or print to fax. Just so you know, if an officer does request a paper copy, you do have to provide them with one by printing off your logs. And this again is only if you're using BigRoad. It's just an electronic logging device. Like if you're using BigRoad just to create your logs that way. If you're not using an engine connected solution, if you are using your DashLink, then you would be able to just select view on screen as your only option. That like you would be able to make that option because that's the way they would have to look at your logs. Basically, at this point, you would hand over your device to the officer, and then they would be able to take a look at your logs from here. So if you noticed before, actually, I think it was on the 24th, I had some violations because I had gone over my drive time, or was it the 23rd? I think the 22nd, actually. Yes, on the 22nd. So I had a violation at this point. As you can see, when you go to inspect logs, it doesn't intentionally show that you have a violation here. Just like on a paper log, if you have gone over your drive time, it doesn't show, oh, hey, this driver's, in violation on a paper log. It's up to the officer to be able to find that information out as they would on paper. And of course, my locations that are missing, it shows no location, but it's not like a warning symbol as it was in my log itself. So yeah, as you can see, you can go back as far as 14 days. I will definitely need to make sure I fix these violations today, actually, because after today, I won't be able to fix the 22nd log anymore. But basically, they will be able to go through the last, the last 7 days in this case, because we selected the option for the last 7 days. And then when they are done, they would just press back and then select that and hand over the device back to the driver. So that's kind of the basic overview of that. I'm just gonna go over again into edit logs just to show some I will actually probably go through a couple of edits just to make sure you have, some basic understanding of what the different screens in BigRoad provide. Again, at the top here, this is where you would go back. So 14 days, it will say, so view logs older than 14 days, you would have to go to your mobile browser. So all the logs you've ever created are all stored online at BigRoad.com. So as long as you have your email and password, or you remember your password, you can get signed in and take a look at all the logs you've ever created. Again, there is still no editing past 14 days. Let me actually go to this day here. So I will make an edit. So let's say this was a mistake. You didn't actually go over your drive time. You forgot to put yourself off duty. What you would do here is you would select a new event. So this looks like this violation happened around 10:15. I'm going to basically select new event. I am going to say, you can either use the arrows back and forth to move by 15-minute intervals, or you can go down to the minutes and actually just quickly go from here. And I think I said 10:15. Yeah, let's do 10:15. Select set, off duty. Make sure you put in your location, any notes if needed, and then select save. So that fixes that violation. The location, actually, you know what? Why not fix the locations? Let's make sure this day is actually completed. And just sign my log. If you try to sign the log with a violation, it will ask you to make sure you first fix the logs before signing it. I mean, you can still override that and sign the log regardless, but if you see that you are in violation I mean, definitely try and fix it before signing it, just to make sure that your logs are in order. So now, as you can see, this day is all fixed. And if we go into the next day, because previously I was still in drive until the next day, the next day is no longer in violation anymore either. And in fact, it takes into account what my status was. It fixed that in from the previous day as well. So it kind of, it tries to kind of figure out what you were doing to go into the next day and that status that would correspond with that. But yeah, I'm just going to go back because that's basically how you would make an edit to the log. As I was saying, the 4 days that showed that I had violations, I basically fixed 2 days. And so now here, it will take me to the next day where I have a violation. So that is basically that part. The other part that I actually wanted to show you, and I'll just start off from the main screen so it makes sense here, is when you see the driver's daily log information here, it may not be filled in. So if it's not, you'll see it like this, and it'll say that driver, vehicle, fleet, and shipping information not yet added. If you are driving or on duty, and you don't fill this in, you're going to basically see a violation for that day. So you select add. Once you select add, it's going to look like this. I'm just going to the next day to show you. It's going to show your driver name, your truck and units, and carrier address. So I'm going to select edit. If you're a driver, this is your name here. If you have a co-driver, they would be listed there. Your truck information, the starting and ending odometer mileage, which why not? I'm going to enter that in right now. If you, let's say you start driving again within that 24-hour period, you can actually just select add truck. If it's the same truck, or if it's a different truck, of course, select a different truck. But as you can see, it continues the odometer mileage from the ending of the previous one. And if you don't actually need to do that, or if you see that you have duplicate odometer mileages for the same truck, you can just exit out and delete that entry. Here again is where you would be able to update or edit your cycle rules. And here is where you would turn on recap. So a lot of drivers are not sure where they can find where to turn on recap. It is under your driver daily log information. When you select recap, if you haven't done anything yet, it will be set to none. You do have to turn it on to full. Select done, and that's updated. And your time zone again should be updated correctly, and your carrier address and carrier name should reflect what is on your account online. So if you update your carrier name or address, and let's say it's not correct, and if you do it from the app, the next day it's going to revert back to whatever is actually listed online. So what your carrier name and address is listed online overrides what you type in the app. So if you update it in the app today, it's not going to update again tomorrow. It's going to go back and revert to what was listed online. So anytime you need to update your carrier name or address, do so by signing in at BigRoad.com into your account that way. And then done. And then of course, if you take a look at notes there, you'll see that your cycle, when your cycle restarted and when you went back on duty and stuff like that. So that is the basics there for basically running through the app. I hope this was helpful, but definitely if you have any questions or concerns at all, definitely give us a call at 1-888-305-8777, and our extension is going to be 1. And if you have any questions, you can also send an email to support@bigroad.com.
All right, so that was our demo. I'd like to thank Debbie for recording that for us so that we could show it with you today. So now I'm going to take you through just a little bit more about the app. And then one thing we really like to do to make sure that everyone's sort of aware of it is discuss the ELD mandate. That's sort of a big thing in the last little bit. So every webinar, we like to take at least a bit of time to go through that and make sure that everyone is aware of what is happening with the ELD mandate. But to start out, though, I'd just like to talk about making sure that your app is up to date. Debbie mentioned it a bit in her demo where she said that you can check your version of the app within the app itself. And again, it's important to do that because we're always releasing updates, especially with the changes that have happened with the ELD mandate. We're constantly updating the app so that it's always in compliance. So it's important to make sure you do that. What we really suggest is whatever system you're using, be it Android or iOS, try to enable the app so that it can be automatically updated without any input from you. That just saves you the time of going into the App Store or the Google Play Store and having to re-download the app every time. It'll just automate that process, so you don't have to worry so much about that. You'll always be running the most up-to-date software. Next big thing, we get asked often about how much data the BigRoad app uses. So an important thing to know is that it uses, we say about 500 megabytes of data per month. It actually uses, on average, a bit less than that. But just to be safe, we like to say that you should have 500 megabytes of data so that you know that you're going to have enough data and that you won't go over your data plan. A lot of plans nowadays tend to be much larger than that anyway, so usually you won't notice much of a hit to your data plan using BigRoad. One of the important things too is keeping in mind whether you have an international plan, if you travel across borders often, and just making sure you don't get roaming charges for data usage. That's really important for drivers to know. So look into your plans and make sure you have the right plan for you when using BigRoad. And then you also have mobile hotspots. So what this What this usually is someone has a tablet, but they don't want to get a separate plan just for the tablet itself. So what you can actually do is use your cell phone's cell data and turn on a mobile hotspot. And that acts as a sort of Wi-Fi router, and you can connect your tablet to the phone using that. So you don't have to worry about having SIM cards in your tablet as well if you just use it more for personal usage and you don't use it with a cell plan. So that's an important thing to know. Next big thing is a GPS. Debbie mentioned it a lot there. You saw it in the emulator she was using. She obviously doesn't have GPS service because it's just based out of the computer. But using your GPS and keeping it on during your entire day is definitely going to help you have sort of better results with your BigRoad logs. So it's really important to make sure that you turn your location services on at the start of every day to make sure it's on. Also, try keeping your device up near the dash. You're going to get the best sort of service in that situation. It's also important to note that GPS signal is different from data, so you don't necessarily use data when you are using your GPS. So in that instance, say with the tablet, if you're using your phone's data service, you can still use the GPS on the tablet without using up data from it itself. One important thing to note, if you're driving through large cities a lot, there can be some issues with high-rise buildings affecting your GPS strength. With most modern phones, this isn't too big of a problem. You're going to have lots of signal strength, but it is something to realize that might just slow down how often your app's updating your location services, but it shouldn't affect you too much. All right. So here are a few of the best practices for BigRoad. One of the main ones is to keep the app in the foreground. And the reason for this is just usually the operating systems, if the apps have been minimized, will update them less often than the apps that you have in the foreground. So by keeping BigRoad in the foreground, your office is going to have the most up-to-date version of both your location and your duty status at all times. So it's really important to keep it in the foreground, as it just helps have that communication go back and forth a lot easier. Something that is always good to know is that you can actually access support from directly within the app. If you go into your profile, there's an option for that. So that's always good. If you are having trouble with the app, just go in through that way. You can send an email to our support team and someone will reach out to you very quickly to be sure to help you out. Another big thing is keeping your phone charged at all times. So we recommend having some sort of device plugged into your vehicle so that the phone or the tablet is always being charged. And the reason we do this is because when your phone isn't plugged in, the app purposefully stops updating as often to help conserve battery power. This is just so that BigRoad isn't a drain on your battery when it's not connected. So again, this goes back to the fact that you want to have the most up-to-date information being sent to your fleet so that it's constantly correct. And the next thing is signing into the correct account. We hear often we have drivers that have over the course of time signed up with BigRoad using 2 different emails, and then from day to day, they'll accidentally use the other email to sign in, and they'll realize that they don't have access to their other logs. Now, this can be a problem because obviously if you're pulling up to a checkpoint and you think that you have all your logs under your same account and you don't, you're going to run into troubles with the inspectors. So just be sure that you're always signing in with the same email address from day to day, and that'll help you out a lot. All right, the final thing is personal conveyance. Now, Debbie touched on this a bit. Personal conveyance is an option that BigRoad allows to fleets that they can turn on from the back end. So for the most part, if your fleet has allowed you to use personal conveyance, if you're part of a fleet, or if you're your own fleet, you'll be able to turn this on. Personal conveyance is basically any drive time that's not being done for the purpose of the company. There's a lot of rules around when you can use personal conveyance. For example, you can't use personal conveyance when driving to another job, something like that. Usually it's only available if you're driving directly to wherever you're going to be sleeping for the night. You're completely unladen, but that is an option with BigRoad. So if you do find yourself using personal conveyance a lot, that is an option. And it's available mostly for ELD and AOBRD purposes for engine connected, so that you're not recording mileage as on-duty driving time when you're actually using personal conveyance. So now I'm going to talk a bit about the ELD mandate. It's really something that's important for everyone to have a good understanding of, because within the next couple of years, it's going to be something that's affecting every truck driver's life out there. Okay, so this is where we like to start with the ELD mandate, and it's about solving what the different acronyms mean. There's a lot of terms that get thrown around, and the three main terms I'd like to focus on are electronic logbook, AOBRD, and ELD. So an electronic logbook is basically what the BigRoad app on its own is. It's really just a digital version of a paper logbook. There's obviously a few more features, like being able to use GPS, automated recording for when the GPS says that you're moving, things like that. But for the most part, it really is a digital version of a paper logbook. Now, when we use the term e-logs, a lot of people confuse that with ELDs, and they think that the app itself is sufficient to qualify as an ELD when it's not. So ELDs really require that engine connection piece, and that's what both this EOBR and AOBRD piece. We focus more on AOBRD because that's the actual terminology that was used. So AOBRD is the type of engine connected device that was used before ELD was published. So that's what all the most of the current systems out there right now are still in AOBRD. So it's important to know these differences just so that for confusion purposes, people aren't using just a electronic logbook like BigRoad without the engine connection and thinking that that is going to be sufficient to have them in compliance with the ELD mandate. So just going off of these different types of logs, here's a sort of brief overview of the pros and cons of these types of logs. So paper, about 80% of drivers are still using paper for their logs. It's familiar and it's easily edited, but it can be messy. It's easy to make a mistake, either math or a mistake of where you put a line, and it takes a lot of time to do this. Now, electronic logbooks, they're pretty much similar to paper. They're editable. It gives you warnings about when you've made a mistake so that you can fix it easily, and it makes nice logs. You don't have to spend that much time. But the big downfall with electronic logbooks is that you need to have a printer. Debbie touched on this earlier. In the rules currently, you have to be able to provide a printed copy of your logs if the officer asks for it. The vast majority don't, but there is still some, particularly in Missouri, that will ask for that. So if you're using an electronic log that's not engine connected, you do have to have the ability to produce a printed log. So ELDs and AOBRDs, they provide all sort of the benefits that an electronic logbook provides you, the simplicity, saving time, automated. And another big benefit is that they don't actually require a printer. So if you're worried about having to print your logs, we do recommend getting a DashLink, which is BigRoad's AOBRD system, soon to be ELD, which will allow you to avoid having to have a printer. So this is the timeline that we're looking at with the ELD mandate. So it was published in December, December 16th to be exact. So with that publication date came a 2-year window, which is the enforcement date. So, excuse me, as of right now, we're looking at a December 2017 date for that time that all drivers are going to have to be using an ELD. Now, the one exemption to that is the AOBRD compliance date. So if you're using a registered AOBRD before the enforcement date, you will be allowed to continue using an AOBRD for an additional 2 years, so into December 2019. And that's usually just so that if you invest early, if you're an early adapter of an engine connected log, you don't have to turn around and invest more money into having an ELD system right away. With BigRoad, that it isn't much of an issue, because when you get started with our DashLink system, if it's an AOBRD now, we guarantee that you'll be able to move to the ELD system right away and not have to worry about anything, or we'll send that to you free of charge. Okay, so when we're talking about who is going to have to use an ELD, this is sort of the rule of thumb we've been operating under, and it is if you currently have to maintain a record of duty status logs, then you will most likely be required to use an ELD. So there are some exemptions to that rule. So these are sort of the most common questions that we hear when we talk about who is going to have one and who isn't. And the biggest one is probably single owner operators. They want to know whether they have to comply. So they do have to comply. There's no exemptions based on fleet size for ELDs. So regardless of whether you're a single driver or a fleet of 1,000, all drivers who don't meet any other exemption are going to have an ELD. So the next big exemption is about running local trips. So people are often asking us if they don't go outside of the 100 air mile radius, are they going to have to use an ELD? And whoops, it looks like I screwed up the answer there. It's actually supposed to say no. There's no, no, you won't have to use an ELD if you are a local area driver. So there's what's called the 8 and 30-day rule. Basically, that means you're allowed to do up to 8 long over-the-road trips in any 30 days. So that's a rolling 30-day period. And you're allowed to do 8 trips, 8 days in those 30 without having to use an ELD, which means you can continue to use a paper log on those days to log your hours. The next question is often about old trucks that don't have an electronic engine. So yes, you are exempt. So you will not have to use a ELD if you have a truck that's manufactured prior to the year 2000. So that's 99 and older. So in that situation, you won't have to use an ELD. If your truck can accept them, there's no reason you can't, but that is the exemption for you there. And the next big one is tow away and drive away operations. So you do qualify for an ELD exemption if you're operating as drive away and tow away. All right, so I'm going to move on and answer some of the questions that we've had for this webinar. The first one, we talked about it earlier too, but how much data is used by each phone using BigRoad every month? So again, that's around 500 megabytes. That's what we recommend. It can vary a bit, but as long as you have about that, you should be fine with BigRoad. You shouldn't go over your data plan. Next question is, are digital logbooks legal in Canada? Yes, they are legal. There are some variations province to province in terms of whether they will accept directly on screens. For the most part, most Canadian inspections do allow it. In terms of the rules, we support Canadian rules as well as the north of 60 exemptions. So, yep, we do have great rules for in Canada drivers. Next question is about linking 2 different devices to a single BigRoad account. If you're looking to do that, all you have to do is sign into each device using the account you use, so whatever your email address is, and then you'll be able to get directly into the same account from there. We do recommend that you don't use 2 devices signed in at the same time, as they may start conflicting with each other trying to update your duty status separately. So be careful with that, but you can sign into the same account from as many devices as you want. The next question is about how troopers approach inspecting with electronic logbooks. So what we hear a lot is that there's quite a number of troopers out there that like it and they're nice and simple. They know the logs are going to be clean. Sometimes some will just wave drivers through if they have a sticker and they know that they're using electronic logs. So that's what we've heard a lot about. Then again, there's also some places, Missouri in particular, where a lot of the troopers are going to make sure that you can print the logs, or if you're engine connected, then that's fine. So there's a bit of a variation, but we find for the most part, troopers do like electronic logs. The next question is about notifications from the app on things like when you're running out of drive time. So you will notice you'll get a notification in your app when your driving hours are getting low, or for example, if you're on a shift reset, you'll get a notification for when that happens. So there are notifications for that. Next question is about whether BigRoad supplies the device. We don't actually provide the devices. We run on a system called Bring Your Own Device. So what that means is you bring the either cell phone or tablet that you're going to use to run our software. So usually it's just the same phone that you use in your day-to-day life. And then you download BigRoad and you can run it directly on your phone without the need for any additional hardware costs, unless you are getting our engine connected device DashLink, which is an additional $10 a month rent for the DashLink device. So the next question is about, will paper logs remain legal? So for the most part, no. Most drivers are going to have to switch to an electronic system, and in particular an ELD, which is engine connected. There are some situations where people will be able to maintain the paper logs, and those are the exemptions I talked about earlier. Local area, for the most part, they won't have to be keeping logs anyway, but driveway, towaway operations, they'll be able to continue using paper, and that's just because since they only really see a truck once, they don't want to have to invest in putting an ELD system in every time they use a new vehicle. BigRoad sort of gets around that because we're a simple plug and play solution. We don't have to be hardwired in, but that's sort of the reasoning behind that exemption. Well, and the next question is, are e-logs better than paper logs, and why? So we sort of went over that earlier when I explained the differences between the different logging types. I would say e-logs are better, basically just because you're not going to run into the violations for small errors that you would with paper if you just make a small mistake. It's really difficult to make a mistake with BigRoad. So that sort of makes it a lot easier for drivers to avoid those issues. They know exactly how much time they have. It's very simple. Next question is about whether or not using BigRoad or any engine connected logging system, you're going to trigger it to put you into driving duty status if you're just, for example, moving within a yard. You get told to add a lot to move your truck. So with BigRoad in particular, there is an option. It's called yard move, and this has to be put in place by the administrators of the fleets. So what this allows you to do is travel small distances. I believe it's about 2 miles without moving into driving status. So basically what this does is if you get told you have to move your truck just a little bit down in a lot, you'll be able to do that without losing any driving time. Next question is about whether ELDs are moving into Canada as well. So we've heard a bit about the Canadian government moving forward with an ELD mandate of their own. From what we've heard so far, they're basically waiting until the American government gets everything fully in place. They see a bit of how it's working down south, and then they're going to put in their own. And it'll probably mirror the American legislation quite a bit. For any companies in Canada that travel across the border a lot, though, you're going to want to get on an ELD before that, because obviously when you go into the United States, you're going to have to use an ELD. So it's important to make sure that you're following the compliance of the country you're driving in at that particular moment. In the United States, that's going to mean having an ELD. This is actually a question on a similar vein, and it's about how many hours you have if you're a Canadian driver driving into the US, how many hours you have for driving. Canadians have a bit more drive time than Americans on their logbooks. So what you have to keep in mind is that you have to follow the rules of whatever jurisdiction you're in. So if you're driving into the United States, you need to make sure that you follow all the rules that any American driver would have to have. And that means following all the rules for your last 7 days as well. So even if you're running on Canadian hours in Canada, you could be put in violation because you've been running over what would be acceptable in the United States. So keep that in mind if you do a lot of cross-border traveling. The next is, can an officer require a driver to fill out paper logs if the officer does not want to look at the inspection data? So what they can do is require you to print your logs from the device. So you're not going to find them often even giving you the option to fill it out on paper, it's certainly possible. It's always up to the officer's discretion. But usually what you'll find is if they're going to want a paper version of the log, they're going to ask for you to print it from BigRoad, which is possible. So just keep that portable printer in your truck and you shouldn't have any problems. All right, and the last question is, does BigRoad notify the fleet or company when a driver is reaching the end of their hours of service? So in a way, yes. So from the dashboard of our BigRoad web app, fleet administrators are going to be able to see how much drive time every driver has left and where they are. That's going to help them sort of plan where they can get more loads, but they will be able to see when a driver is getting low on hours. If a driver skips a break, for example, something like that, that will come up in the fleet system. All right, well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope this webinar was a bit of help. If you want to watch it again, there will be a recording posted shortly, so you'll be able to watch that from our blog. So thank you, everyone. Excuse me. Thank you, everyone, for coming out, and hope you have a good day.